We are back here on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, not moving too far off of the contract talks with the two biggest remaining players that still need to figure out what they're going to do with their contracts, and more so, I should say, what each of their teams is going to do with these players and their contracts, because we just finished talking about Trent Williams and is he going to hold out into the regular season, and the Bengals and their star wide receiver Ja'Marr Chase are facing the same sort of standoff right now as to whether or not Jamar's going to get a contract extension or not this year, because it looked like it was going to be a great sort of development last week, almost exactly a week from today. It was last Sunday when Ja'Marr Chase began practicing. It was a big announcement, right, that he was back participating, not just showing up there in street clothes. He was showing up, practicing, helmet on and everything. It looked like this was coming to a resolution, right, sooner rather than later last week. But then, Zach Taylor, ironically, on how it all played out, he confirmed that Ja'Marr Chase was going to practice all last week and that he, again, felt confident that this was all going to be worked out in the end before the regular season. But, of course, as soon as you say something, the complete opposite happens. Ja'Marr Chase again went back to not practicing the rest of the week once Zach Taylor said that. Now, I'm not sure, right, personally, if he meant to do that way, that if he heard Zach Taylor say that and then he just decided to not practice, or if this was all premeditated. Regardless, it was pretty funny, pretty ironic how it all played out, and Zach Taylor even mentioned afterwards that he probably spoke too soon on that situation, and now after the actions of last week where we thought this was heading towards a amicable, solution with both sides, now we're back to the same old, asking the same old question. Will Ja'Marr Chase play or will he hold out into the regular season? And now he's obviously looking for a massive deal, and he has earned one, I would say. I don't think a lot of people would dispute that because of how just seamless the transition has been for Ja'Marr right as soon as he gets into the NFL. He has those struggles in the preseason, dropping all the balls, and then once the regular season starts, it's like you had a whole new player, the same guy you got from LSU, forgot about the preseason completely, and just right away considered one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. But what's so unusual about this deal is that obviously he isn't in the last year of his deal. He's not in the fifth-year option like CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Aiyuk, where he still has the final year of his contract, his rookie contract, which is this year, and then he has that fifth-year option next year, technically. So the Bengals don't really have to extend him right now. There's no deadline fearing any free agency or anything like that, but the leverage that Ja'Marr Chase does hold is that, unlike any other team, I would probably say, other than probably the Vikings, Ja'Marr Chase is just as important to that team as their quarterback is. And that's saying a lot because Joe Burrow is obviously their quarterback. This team doesn't move anywhere without Joe, but almost similarly, I don't think it moves any further, that much further, than it does without Ja'Marr Chase at all for however many games he decides to miss. So the longer, this has been played out, once I saw Ja'Marr come back to practice on Sunday, I thought that was pretty much it. Once he went back to holding in, technically, just showing up and not practicing, I started to really consider the fact that Ja'Marr is pretty serious about not playing in the regular season, because if you're not going to hold out, why would you just hold back in throughout the practices, right? There's no reason to kind of tease players or tease fans out there that you're back on Sunday and then you're back to holding in, right? There's no reason to do that unless you're really considering holding out of the regular season without that contract extension. So that's the sort of back and forth that we're facing right now. And now, what sort of contract that Ja'Marr is looking for? It's going to be high up there. He's shooting for a CeeDee, a Justin Jefferson type of deal. And that's exactly what Ian Rappaport reported over the weekend on what he is hearing on what kind of deal Ja'Marr Chase is looking for. He said, "My understanding is that the two sides are still discussing a long-term extension that, if he got it, would make him either tied for the highest paid wide receiver with Ja'Marr Chase or beating Justin Jefferson by 1 cent, which I believe is the goal by Ja'Marr Chase." And it makes sense, right? He's definitely earned a contract like that, but again, for him to get a big deal like that so early on is very rare and unusual, because you look at now the facts around this whole situation with Jamar and being still 2 years left on his contract in this situation. You look at everything that is and could happen in this situation, right? Because if you extend Jamar Chase right now, it would allow Cincinnati to spread his cap hit over 2 additional years, right? Because he has those 2 years left on his rookie deal. If he gets a 3-year deal, they can extend it to a 5-year deal, technically, right? Extend that cap hit. If it's a 4-year deal, it's 6 years, technically, they could extend it, right? And so on and so on. So that is a benefit, to extend that cap hit a little bit longer if they decide to do that. But with this being so unprecedented, you have players with 2 years left rarely sit out over a new deal. You know, you don't really get a case where you still have a year left on your rookie deal, then still the 5th-year option. Very rarely do you see a player hold out in this situation, and especially for non-quarterbacks, you can maybe understand it for a quarterback, but for anybody else, it's extremely rare, and it's even more unlikely that they end up getting that deal, because again, the team doesn't feel like they need to do anything right now, and then you sort of are just in a moment where, all right, if Jamar's not going to move, if he's really serious about holding out, and the team, the Cincinnati Bengals, don't, again, feel an intensity or an urge to extend him because they simply don't have to, then we're just in that same spot again, right? Just waiting to see, like Trent Williams and the 49ers, who makes the first move, who throws the first punch, and who sort of caves to the others, just stand still right now. Who caves to the others' needs right now in terms of figuring out what they want at this point in time. But then you might look at other receivers in this situation that have also gotten extensions with 2 years left, right? You might point to Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, who also had 2 years left on their deals, but they got their extensions this year, similarly to Jamar Chase. They were also in Jamar Chase's draft class, so they've got their contract extensions. What makes it different with Jamar Chase, right? He's better. He's proven to have better stats, more, I would say, value to his team compared to Jalen alongside Tyreek, and also Devontae Smith alongside A.J. Brown. Jamar is that guy for the Bengals, so they got their extensions. Why can't Jamar Chase get his at this point, the exact same time that those guys got their extensions? But the difference with that is that Jalen and Devontae weren't really threatening on holding out at any point this offseason. It almost came, to me at least, as a surprise that, they were going to get those extensions. They were only 3-year deals, right? Because they had those 2 additional years added on. So they're really under contract for the next 5 years. But it was more of a amicable situation with those two guys, right? Because as much as I heard about that their extension period was coming up, I never really thought that it was going to happen, pretty soon. Devontae's really surprised me, but again, another receiver that has earned an extension. He's not making the kind of money that Justin Jefferson or Jamar or CeeDee Lamb are making on their deals, but he got his extension, and it just, became a matter of, he said it himself, he was just going to wait for all of this to play out, and if it happens, it happens, and it all came to fruition in a very friendly sort of way. Same thing with Jalen. All you heard about Jalen and the extension talks with the Dolphins was that it was going to happen. They were going to exercise that 5th-year option, and soon after that, he got his extension, another 3-year deal, and he's making around $28 million based on those 3 years. So now with Jamar, it hasn't gone as smoothly just because he is holding out. He isn't participating in practice, and unlike those two guys, he is threatening of not playing in the regular season, where those other receivers were just not doing that at this point in time. So it makes it a little bit tougher, because you are backing the team, that drafted you, that you are on, into a corner where, they feel like this is very unnecessary, I'm assuming. And their owner, even Mike Brown, said that discussing extensions right now isn't the most optimal time to do so. He'd rather wait for the offseason, and that probably was going to be their plan. Wait for Jamar to play this year, and then next offseason, in the spring, similarly to April and May when Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle got their deals, than to work out something at that time with Ja'Marr Chase. But right now, it seems like Ja'Marr is very adamant about getting it done right now. And according also, ESPN's Jeremy Fowler continued on and said that the Bengals have started to intensify their efforts to get this extension done with Ja'Marr Chase, but nothing is imminent and nothing right now is close to really happening. The Bengals remain hopeful that something can happen, but right now the Bengals have tried to approach this with a bit more urgency as we get closer to the start of the regular season. And technically, with this odd situation with Ja'Marr and the Bengals, Ja'Marr doesn't technically have the traditional leverage that you see with some of these players, right? You look at Dak, he has a no trade clause, no tag clause, and other receivers, CeeDee, Brandon, like I mentioned, they're on their last year. So Ja'Marr doesn't have any of that leverage, but it's so unique in the way that Ja'Marr is very much so very dependent or very crucial to the success of the Bengals. So if you don't feel like there's any urgency there, fine. Jamar's just going to probably sit out, and then it becomes a real will of just standing your ground and determining if you really want him back, which obviously the Bengals do. Obviously the Bengals want him to play, but going back to last week with Chad Ochocinco's comments mentioning that, sort of hinting to the fact that Ja'Marr could also hold out, and at the time it seemed pretty light, like it wasn't really to be taken seriously, but now the closer we are to the regular season, it could become a lot more troubling for the Bengals to figure out this situation. And fortunately for them, though, they have one of the easier schedules, at least in their division. They have the easiest schedule in the AFC North, and their first game is against the New England Patriots, which, no disrespect to the Patriots, Jamar's not going to be the difference maker probably in that game, considering where the Patriots are right now. But you could go by with 1 week, but then the next week, if this starts to become a habit, much like Trent Williams, then we start getting into this area where the Bengals might just have to cough up the extension right now, which could serve them a little bit better, getting the contract out now. You don't know who or what kind of money you could be facing next offseason if other receivers start getting extensions. So it could become cheaper if you do it now, but again, it just came out of nowhere where Ja'Marr just not practicing, not showing up, and I think it's just taking the Bengals by surprise at this point. So kind of regaining their senses, trying to get this done as best as they can with the timeline now on Sunday at 1 o'clock when they play the Patriots. We're going to see how this all develops over the next few days. By Thursday or Wednesday, like I said with Trent, if nothing's done by then, I don't see why they would throw him out there anyway. Again, playing the Patriots is one thing, but just no practice at all. It makes no sense for them to just play him, and it does provide an opportunity for other receivers, but again, you need Ja'Marr Chase out there, especially because you could be losing T. Higgins next year. So those are your only real two guarantees, T. Higgins and Joe Burrow right now in terms of proven playmakers. We'll see how they resolve this entire thing with Ja'Marr Chase going forward. But the next couple topics are not really contract related, just more so questions that I thought I'd bring up on some of these players. One of them being Josh Jacobs, obviously signing with the Patriots. He reportedly had interest from the Chiefs and also the New York Giants over the offseason. So we're going to talk about whether or not signing with the Green Bay Packers made the bigger impact over signing with the Chiefs or potentially the Giants. Then moving on with another topic, we have the Eagles and why they decided to keep James Bradberry. It felt like a very polarizing topic, so we're going to get into that, what their general manager Howie Roseman said, and whether or not it was a good decision overall to keep him, before we finish off today's episode with some more predictions on the final standings in each division. We have the very anticipated AFC North on today's show, so we're going to get to all of that when we return after this short break.
Look